So now that we've got our quote laid out, we want to start thinking about how do I explain that quote and explain it in a way that's really clear to our reader. And for that, what we're going to use is what is called commentary or explanation. And so there's a chart you can use. If you go over to Canvas, it's right here. We have this thing called commentary type. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm actually going to go ahead and open that up in a new window. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to just decide which ones of these commentaries could work for me. Which ones make sense to me. So I just want to kind of imagine what it might look like and see if it kind of makes sense. So here, my quote is, according to the Screen Actors Guild's National Director for Equal Employment Opportunities and Diversity, I've tagged my quote, Adam Moore, slowly but surely, broadcast networks are realizing that the dollars and eyeballs are coming from incredibly diverse populations. And folks are tired of watching the same old, same old. Whether we're talking about age or gender or ethnicity, the LGBT or disability, audiences are savvier and less willing to put up with things that they find unrealistic or not reflective of the world around them. So I just want to quickly ask myself, could I do this as a contrast to the opposite? If the opposite happens, so if, and my opposite is really up here, so if they do not increase the diversity of writers and directors, then, well, what does this say would happen? They're less willing to put up with things around that are unrealistic or not reflective of the world around them. So if they are not, and I want to use my actual material in my quotes to do this, I want to draw direct lines to my quote. So if they do not increase the diversity, then the audiences who are less willing to put up with things they find to be unrealistic or reflective of the world around them will find other networks that are, and the networks that are more diverse will gain market share while those who are less diverse will lose it. That works. I don't know that I love it, but I think it's functional. And so that's one that I might put a plus by. Like, okay, that works. Another one is I could play it out. If what the evidence saying is true, then X will happen. If X happens, then Y will happen. So if, and here I want to use the evidence, I don't want to use the opposite. So if audiences are less willing to put up with what they find to be unrealistic or not reflective. And really, what I'm doing is I'm choosing the part of the quote that I think is the most important. And I think what's important are is this, or I could even say, if networks are realizing that dollars and eyeballs are coming from an incredibly diverse population, well, what will happen if they realize that? If they realize that it's coming from an incredibly diverse population, if they realize that audiences are less willing to put up with things they see as unrealistic or not reflective of the diversity of the world around them, then they will stop watching these shows that they think are unrealistic or not reflective and find shows that are. Therefore, thereby, you know, reducing the marketability of shows that are not diverse. So that one again, similar way, this one kind of works the same way. And actually I kind of liked that one a little bit better because I felt like it worked more on the quote. Long-term impact, I could play this out, but think long ahead into the future. So same kind of thing, you know, if from 10 years ago, future generations would expect. So if we continue to be less diverse as our country becomes more diverse, even more people will be um, even more people will find it TV not reflective of the situation in our country, and therefore I don't like this one as well. You can kind of see how this one would play out for me, but I'm not going to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a minus by this one. It's not one that I'm going to use. I'm not going to try to flesh it out. Emotionally connecting to the reader. So I've got here that I'm explaining why X will help or hurt people. So I could explain why these broadcasts would hurt people. So that would look something like, and I really want to use the material. So I don't want to talk about people not seeing themselves reflected, but I want to talk about the marketability because that's what I'm trying to prove. So here I would have to say something along the lines of, if we are less willing to, if these audiences are less willing to be reflective of the world around them, then people who work on these television shows will lose marketability, and their writers who are not as diverse will lose their jobs and they will starve. And I don't like this one, so this one doesn't seem like one that I want to do, because really we're talking about markets. We're not really talking about something that's deeply emotional. So that one I'm going to leave off. If it worked in the past, well, I don't really have anything about the past here. I don't really have any reference to the past. So that's not one I want to do. I could create a win-win, and I think this one might work for me. So not only would not only would not only would increasing the directors, actually this one's harder for me to think about. I like this idea because I think it would work, but I'm not really sure what my first win is, because here we're talking about not necessarily a win as far as we're talking about a challenge. We're not talking about the increase of the audience. So I'm really not dealing with a win. I'm dealing with kind of preventing a loss. And so a win-win here would have to be if my quote were that by opening up opportunities, we actually increase the markets, then I could say something like, not only would increased diversity increase the market, but by increasing the market, we would also be seeing a wider variety of shows and greater variety of people represented. But that's not what I really can do here, because I don't have a win starting off. We're talking about avoiding a loss. So I actually don't like this one. And so offer other solutions. Again, I don't think this one's going to work for me because I don't know what the other solution is, and I'm arguing for a specific solution. I could ask the consequence question. If the evidence says this will happen, do we want X? Is this acceptable? So what that would look like for me is something like, if people are less willing to put up with things they find to be unrealistic and not reflective of the world around them, and therefore will stop watching these programs. This is not something the networks can afford to have happen, losing their market share. Therefore, to avoid this loss of markets, they need to increase the amount of diversity in their writers and directors to make sure that they keep people watching those shows. And so that would kind of be the controversy, the asking a consequence question. And then the last one is valid. So that one I think could work. And then I want to think about talking about validating the expert. And I've got the National Director for Equal Employment Opportunities, Adam Moore, from the Screen Actors Guild. So I feel like he is someone I could trust. So that one I think I could do. And what that would probably look like for me is, if the National Director of Equal Opportunity, Employment, and Diversity, Adam Moore, for the Screen Actors Guild, for the Screen Actors Guild, um, believes that dollars and eyeballs are coming from an incredibly diverse population, and that this population is not willing to watch programs who are that are less reflective of us. The networks need to take steps like increasing the diversity in the writers' rooms and the directors to ensure that these populations continue to watch their programs. Um, and so that's another one. And then so I've got what, asking the consequence question, validating the expert, playing it out, or contrasting the opposite. And I want to think about, so I've got 4 out of 8 that are going to work for me. So I'm going to ditch the 4 that don't work for me. I'm actually going to ditch the 6 that I didn't think worked as well. And then I'm just going to play out those. And so I would just explain out either playing it out, or I would explain the validating the expert. So if I were to explain the playing it out, I'm going to choose whichever one I think works best. So if, and I'm just going to play it out exactly, if X. So X is over here. If modern audiences are less willing to put up with things, and I'm going to clarify this, if less willing to put up with programs and movies that, okay, that I'm going to leave alone, then X will happen. Then they will seek out the programs which do reflect them. Comma, programs that are more diverse. I'm going to go ahead and punctuate that. That's a sentence. Therefore, networks and movie studios who hire more diverse writers and directors So that would be a solid commentary for playing it out. And I know what you're thinking. Do I have to write that much? Yeah, probably. Realistically, these should be 2 or more likely 3 sentences. So, do I have to write that much? Yeah. Yeah, you do. I could also do this by the expert one. I like that one too. So, I'm going to start with my same if. And if I look down here, if a really qualified person. So I need to establish that he's qualified. That's the first thing I want to do. So if the national I'm just going to copy and paste it. for the Screen Actors Guild. And you can see that I'm going right back to the quote. I'm showing exactly the parts of the quotes that I'm using. I'm using the parts of the quote that show me his expertise in this case. And then I want to talk about what they think. So he thinks that audiences are not willing to watch movies and TV So that really is just what he thinks. Then we should believe it. So then what should they do if they're not willing to watch those? The network executives should hire I'm going to break this into a new sentence. This would so it would guarantee that these programs would have a greater appeal to maybe a wider range of people. So again, about the same length. Two full sentences, two pretty long, complex sentences, but either one of those would work as pretty good commentary for this. I'm going to show you one more thing over here before I sign out. So not only do each of these types of commentary give you an example of what it is, but each one of these types of commentary have a sample sentence here, an example of how it would look, all playing to the DNR, all playing to the same example. So you can see how the different ones would work. Not all of them work with everything, so you just want to think about, when do I want to use this? Is this in a case of when I want to use this to explain it? All right, so that's commentary. Hopefully that helps.